great Sunday afternoon to everyone out there. Welcome to the Sports Note for April 16th. We're actually now right in the middle of the first games of the first round of the NBA playoffs. Now that the play-in tournaments are over and everything, we've actually got LeBron and the Lakers matching off with Memphis. That's the 2 versus 7 matchup in the West. And LeBron only playing 55 games this year, the first major injury he's had in his career where he's missed this many games in a season. Um, we've got we've got 3 more games going on. We actually even had the defending champion Warriors opening on the road last night against Sacramento in a game that they lost. It was Sacramento's first playoff victory in almost 17 years. You got to go way, way back for that. That might have still been like the Chris Webber, Mike Bibby era, if memory serves correct. And yet, what's weird with the NBA scheduling is the Lakers are wearing white uh, on the road, and the Kings were wearing black and silver at home, even though the court was purple. But it's the NBA. Their uniform game will never make any sense. But one of the teams that's not playing today that quite honestly should have been are the New Orleans Pelicans. And the major reason for that is the fact that the franchise of the franchise, Zion Williamson, has been out of action, is now will finish out of action for the year with their season now done since January 4th, I'm sorry, with a hamstring injury. It wasn't a tear, it was a hamstring strain, and the fact that Williamson missed the remainder of the season from that point for an injury, even if it was a grade 3 hamstring tear, should take about 3 months to completely heal from and rehab. And the Pelicans were 23-14 at the time of Zion's injury, and they were sitting third in the West. They ended up finishing 19-26 without him, although it's to note that they were 7-3 in their last 10 to get into the play-in tournament in that capacity. So, do the math. They were 12-23 without him before that last stretch, and then the 123-118 loss to New Orleans in the play-in game the other night means that now they're going to be picking 14th in the draft in the first round later on in June. It's going to be their only pick because they flipped their second round pick. So this is a very, very dangerous predicament if you're the New Orleans Pelican franchise. You've got the cornerstone of your franchise who could end up being one of the best players in the NBA when he's healthy. But let's also be completely honest. Zion is 6'6", 284. You don't find a whole lot of power forwards, especially nobody of his size, with that weight level on them to be that, I don't want to say dominant, but at this particular point, LeBron is 6'8", and he's only 250, and he's got a much better physique than Zion does. Look at some of the other power forwards in the NBA. You've got certain guys like Evan Mobley is still growing into his body, even though he's only 22. He's only 210 pounds. Again, LeBron's 250. Some of the there was one other name I was thinking of out there who's only 250. A 6'6" power forward should not be 286 pounds. And let's keep in mind that with his injury last year, he was up to nearly 320 pounds. Yeah, now he is a freak of nature for a 6'6" guy to be able to just kind of standing jump with maybe a half step underneath him. Zion is hopefully everything that the Pelicans were banking on when he came out of Duke as the number 1 overall pick back in 2019. But the problem that New Orleans has to contend with is not only his availability, but it's also his contract, because Zion was paid $13.4 million this year for only playing in a third of New Orleans games. Keep in mind, he played just 24 games his rookie season. He missed 9 in his sophomore campaign and did not suit up at all last year, with all of these coming due to injury in some form or another. With Williamson making 13.4 this year, he also had a club option for the next 2 years on his rookie contract, but then signed a 5-year, $194.3 million extension, and that's going to kick in once the finals conclude here in mid-June. The predicament that the Pelicans, do they bank on Zion hopefully coming in healthy finally, so we can actually get a glimpse of how good he looked in his sophomore campaign, or maybe even earlier this year until the hamstring injury, because even though it's not written into the CBA with the NBA, and it's not like a bird exception, but they call this the poison pill provision. The idea is that if New Orleans wanted to just move on, they could move Zion Williamson before the new contract takes effect. I can't remember if it's August 1 or September 1. The problem with this is that it's kind of was the precedent that was set back when Jeremy Lin got signed away by the Rockets after Lin's sanity exploded with the Knicks, is that if he was traded, not only would whoever trade for him have to pay the $13.4 million. How the poison pill works is that if they are still if they've signed an extension still in the midst of their rookie contract, when that kicks in, not only do you not pay what the base salary would be, is that you have to add the base salary plus what the extension was, and then you actually would have to average that out over the length of it. So in Zion's case, we're talking $13.4 million for the year, and then 5 years of 194. So you smash the 194 plus the 13.4, you divide by 3, and it would end up meaning that it would be a $34.6 million salary cap hit for whoever would actually acquire Zion if the Pelicans decided to trade him. But Zion's not the only one that has this type of parameter in their contract. John Morant's got it in Memphis. DeAndre Hunter's got it in Atlanta. Tyler Hero's got it with Miami. Darius Garland's got it in Cleveland. The difference is all 4 of those guys aren't going anywhere and largely are healthy enough to where they've played in a majority of their team's games. And what's the best ability is availability. Thing is that Zion is not available, and the other aspect is that by Oklahoma City, who knocked out New Orleans, by New Orleans signing this deal and offering this deal by GM David Griffin, it's something that you actually have to question their mindset and their accountability for this if this whole Zion experiment blows up in their face in the next year or so. And remember that David Griffin was the general manager. I don't even want to say the architect, because we all know that was basically Griffin going to Dan Gilbert and saying, "Hey, LeBron wants this guy, this guy, this guy to build around him," and then they went, and then Gilbert said, "Okay, go out and make the move." For the Cavs' 2016 championship run. New Orleans is not in the same predicament. You've got an all-world potential type talent in Zion, drafted number 1 overall, like Kyrie Irving was, like LeBron was with Cleveland, but it's not the same type of scenario because he's never available. Kyrie has set out a lot of games in the last few years, but that's largely because of off the court issues. It's certainly not dealing nearly as much with injury as it was with the comments, naturally, with the film that we touched about when that happened a couple of months ago here on the Sports Note. It's his refusal to get the COVID vaccine when there were still blocks up all over the place in the state of New York, which again is not the scenario anymore. Kyrie's since been moved to a Dallas team that did not make the playoffs and tanked, and then got hit with a $750,000 fine for sitting guys the last couple of games of the year to make sure it betters their draft position. Because otherwise it could have been Dallas picking 13 or 14. Now they're back in the lottery, and they could end up moving into the top 10, but maybe 6th or 7th with the way that things stagger out. But this is an experiment that is rapidly turning Zion into, he's not Michael Olowokandi levels of number one overall bust, but he's going to be buying up real estate in the neighborhood. If the injuries do not start to resolve themselves, he doesn't start taking much better care of his body. And for a guy who said he felt great, but Griffin and the front office said that he wasn't cleared for 5-on-5 play, maybe shouldn't be throwing windmill dunks down in shoot around before the game and making it a game time decision whether or not to activate him for something of that nature. Who's to say that New Orleans wouldn't have actually gotten out of the play-in round and been fed to Denver or Memphis in the first round, where they would have gone out in 5 or 6 games. But the fact that Williamson did not play the entirety of last year, played 29 games this year, and is still not healthy enough to where he couldn't have been activated for one game, even if it might have been for a half, to give his team a better chance of getting into the playoff tournament, and then maybe also kind of rehabbing to where he could have come back for the playoff series, for the best of 5 series, maybe set out the first couple of games on the road, come home, and then maybe kind of given, Oklahoma City a spark to be able to make a series. Why do I keep saying Oklahoma City? To be able to give New Orleans a spark like that, where they could again potentially steal a couple of games from Memphis or from Denver. So let me know what you guys think. Is the bust word starting to creep into the vocabulary when we talk about Zion? Do you think he does get moved? Where would be a good fit for him? Do you see him playing out this contract? Do you see him being moved in the middle of this extension? What do you think New Orleans does to be able to kind of get some help around him this way? If he does start to if he is injured next year, could they actually have another piece or two in place to be able to make that run for when he potentially does come back for the playoff stretch drive, or if New Orleans gets into the playoffs next year, where it could certainly be a shot in the arm? But again, let me know what you guys think. I'll be back with you guys here hopefully later on this week. We are anticipating the next episode of the Wise Guys coming up on Thursday night. Mike and I have some topics at hand that we wanted to touch base with that we missed, that we didn't get a chance to because of the fact that we missed last week's episode, and we brought that up on our most recent episode 2 weeks ago. But we will see you guys very, very soon, and take care.